Sangaitla, everyone. Welcome to our coffee time with these incredible people who are our guests with us this evening, where we're going to be talking about healing and about the work that we are doing as Native peoples across the state and so much more. But we're going to get into more of those details in a minute. I want to first start off by thanking all of you for your time tonight. And introduce myself just really briefly. I'm Lingít and Haida. I come from quen, the people of Cake, and I am from the mouth, and we are the mouth of the dawn people. And I'm both on my Tlingit side, I'm Raven Kachadi, freshwater mark sockeye salmon. On my Haida side, I am Chichkit náay, and our crest is the hummingbird. And I get to be here with my sister Ayyu, working for First Alaskans Institute. And we're so happy to be able to co-host the session this evening with Tina. I call her Tina, but she's really Dr. Tina Woods. And with Rose Domnick and with Bob Sam. And just so lucky that we get to spend some time together tonight. So Chish everyone for joining us. And I'll hand it over to Ayyu so she can introduce herself.
Iñupiaq, Ayyu Iñupiaq. I'm Ayyu Qassataq. I come from Ungangax, also known as Lingít. My grandparents were Stanton and Irene Kitchtag. My parents are Doug and Vernita Herdman, and I've got 4 kiddos that I raise here on Dena'ina lands in Iñupiaq. I serve as vice president for First Alaskans Institute, where I've been since 2010. And I have to agree, I just feel so filled up with feeling lucky to get to spend this time with some of my favorite people. So Iñupiaq for spending your evening with us and helping to bring your strong hearts and your minds into our space. Iñupiaq. Okay.
So tonight our focus with our special guests here is really, I guess it serves a couple different purposes. One is just because getting to spend time with these folks is an incredible gift. And hearing the way they think about what healing is and how we are engaging in healing as Native people is a real critical conversation for our communities. The other is that next week, First Alaskans Institute will be hosting a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation tribunal space on boarding schools. And when we talk about boarding schools, we mean them in the broadest sense. So it's inclusive of residential schools, boarding homes, orphanages, and those other institutions that took our children away from us because they were Native. And there's so many different ways that happened through government action, through private enterprise action, through church action. And as a consequence, we have been, as distinct Native peoples, we lived through the same colonizing force that included the taking of our children, as well as, of course, the taking of our lands, our spirituality, our practices for medicine and healing, our ability to hunt and fish and harvest and gather has been criminalized, so many things. And we've been holding a couple different tribunals in those on those topics, protecting our ways of life, as well as lands and laws, those external forces that have so impacted us. And we've been taking our time to get to this one that's coming up next week, because it is such a critical topic, a critical thing that lives in our lives, this experience and impact and the consequences of boarding schools on our families, on our communities, on our cultures, on our languages, in our relationships to our homelands. And we wanted to approach it with a lot of love, with a lot of sensitivity, so that we could prepare a place for the truth to be told, to welcome the truth telling of our people about their experiences, our shared and collective and personal experiences with boarding schools. And so we're inviting into that tribunal space survivors of boarding schools. We're inviting into that tribunal space the descendants of survivors. We're inviting into that communal space the descendants of ancestors who didn't make it back from those schools. We're inviting into this space representatives of our cultures, of our languages, of our communities who had their children taken from them. So we're coming at this from, as much as we can, a very holistic way of looking at that separation, that tearing our children away from us moment, and the long-lasting consequences it has had in terms of our well-being as Native people, our identity as Native people, our knowledges, our ways of being able to live, all of the things that make us who we are. And we want to be able to prepare ourselves as the folks who are going to be hosting this, but most importantly, prepare our community and the people who may step forward to share their truth. And we want to make sure that we have the best available knowledge and tools. And we've been working with a group of folks giving us advice and guidance. We have elder advisors, and I want to recognize Bob Sam as being one of those. Jim LaBelle and Liz Sunnyboy as well. We've met with a group of our Native healers from around the state for the past many years, helping us get ready for this as well. And next week, we're going to create that space for us to hear the truths and share the truths. And we know that it's both a personal journey and also a collective journey towards healing. And we come from diverse, amazing people who have been able to, despite all that has happened, still be here. We have a strength that surpasses our lived experience today and our understanding of it, how strong our ancestors were and have been for us. And as we lead up to next week, and the reason we're holding it next week and why we're holding it virtually, although we had hoped to hold it in person, is that, as we all know, over the last year, our ancestors have been crying out and being heard finally. They're being found across the country and in Canada. And there has been no forum for us to talk about this and to heal together and to work together to ensure that this never happens to our families and our children again. And so unsupported, our people are engaging with this news of more and more of our ancestors being found in unmarked graves across the country. And so our effort here tonight is to help people be supported and to help all of us be supported and ready for next week and what comes afterwards. So the purpose of our coffee time tonight, and we call it a coffee time because as Native people, this is where the things that need to be talked about usually do, around our kitchen tables, having coffee and nooks, dry fish, salmon, fish spread, crackers, all the good things. Oh, my mom just handed me seaweed and king salmon head. But this is the place where we can really talk about the things that matter most. And so we encourage you who are watching, and then of course our guests, not even our guests, I don't like that word, it puts too much distance between us, our relatives, our people here, you know, to not feel shy about eating on camera or drinking your coffee or your tea or tea and your water, because if we were together around a table, that's what we would be doing together. And it's part of the way that we build our relationship and be together in a shared experience. So that was kind of a longish explanation because I felt like it deserved it, to really understand the context of why we're having this conversation tonight. And over the evening's discussions, you know, we'll make sure to try to drop in the chat on the Facebook thread the flyer for the boarding school tribunal that's happening next week, in case folks are interested in participating in some way. There's a number of different roles, so you don't have to come as a truth provider. A truth provider is somebody who will be willing or interested to share their story or their family story, their community story. So we'll make sure to drop that in the Facebook Live thread so folks can take a look and learn more about it. But with that, I want to turn to our relatives here and ask them to introduce themselves. And I guess I'll start with Rose first, and then we'll go to Bob, and then to Tina. Does that sound good, folks? Okay. Rose?
Sorry. Asikpa taknakuya mavet especially ilaga khluti. Yuhtun fani atka nuyaingo kasatun su Rose. I'm really grateful and honored to be a part of this circle. And my Yupik name is Nuyailngok. It's a name given to me by my grandpa, who named me after my aunt, his oldest daughter, who died from TB about the time that I was born. My dad's side of the family comes from Chokachtalak. It's on the Pesunak River, toward the tundra between the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers. My mom's side of the family come from Dakchak. It's a community below Marshall, was a community below Marshall. And I was born and raised in St. Mary's. I presently am doing, continuing the work I've done for a long time. A lot of the work that I've been involved around in is healing and move toward our Indigenous identity. And I had done this work for quite some time at YKHC, at our tribal health organization. And I left there in August to do only the work I am most passionate about. So I continued to do training and consultation work, all centered around Indigenous healing. I live here in Bethel. My husband, my 2 daughters, and 2 grandbabies. We make Bethel our home. Thank you very much for having me here with you. Doi.
Sheesh, and welcome, Rose. Bob?
Ganestish for allowing me to be part of this coffee time. I've got some coffee brewing in a few minutes, so after my introduction, I'm going to enjoy a cup. My Tlingit name, Shaganasta, it roughly translates to the man with the golden face, or the mountain goat who has a human face, and even the man who taught humans how to respect the dead. That's a name that I follow, and I'm very humbled by having that kind of name. I'm a raven, dog salmon, Clint AD. My mother was born out in Auk Bay. My mother's Tlingit name is náay, and I am also a child of a bear or wolf called Guantan, and a grandchild of killer whale, the Duchlawady. So I'm very lucky to be born here in Alaska and to be Alaska Native and to have a culture and to really rely on our inner strengths as a people is really powerful for me to see such healers around us. And I look forward to seeing more, but at the same time, as I get older, I realize there's going to be some things I'm not going to see in my lifetime. But that doesn't stop me from having hope. And I'm really, as difficult as this is for us, what we know as the Creator knows we are ready for this. So that's why we're here, and we are being carried. So I rely heavily on faith, heavily, more than ever, but at the same time, wow, what a wonderful time we are in. Wonderful spirits. So let's let the children lead us and set aside our hard feelings, ego, and follow our heart. So I'm looking forward. I have a lot to share, and I'm very happy to be here. Ganestish, thank you. Coffee time.
Coffee time. Coffee time. Yeah, Sheesh, Bob. Tina?
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I feel very blessed to be here this evening with all of you for coffee time. And I just appreciate hearing from Rose and Bob, our elders, when you speak. It just really, really touches me. Ong Ong, hello, hello. I am Tina Woods. I'm Unangax. I'm Aleut originally from St. Paul Island. I'm the daughter of the late Maria Shishnikov. My mother was this beautiful Aleut woman who was a servant to the church, and she spoke her language fluently. She had 11 of us. I don't speak the language, but I'm very proud of where I come from. I'm also the daughter of the late Juan Dueñas Leon Guerrero. My father was Chamorro from the island of Guam. So I come from two different islands, and I was raised very traditional in the Chamorro culture to live off the land. And something that we have very much in common is respecting our elders. Clear across the world, I carried being raised to really respect my elders. And so I am a mom. I have two children, Jasmine, who's 21, and she's working full time. She's going to school at Alaska Pacific University. And my boy, Hunter, who is 11, and he's in the 5th grade. My husband's Koyukon Athabaskan from Rampart. And we moved to Juneau this last June. And so I work for Lingít and Haida, and I am a trained clinical community psychologist, but my best training comes from elders throughout the state of Alaska. And I am really blessed to be a part of this, to create space for our people to share their heart. So thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah.
Yeah, goodness, geez, how I really appreciate what Bob was saying about just letting the children lead and following their stories, and I know that we have it in us. We have it in us to hear these truths, to share these truths, and to work on our healing journeys together, for that personal healing, and then also our collective healing as Alaska Native peoples, and as a state now, with everyone else who now calls Alaska home. But I also know that spirituality and that strength of understanding almost feels like a muscle that we have to work out to strengthen, to help us get through those things that are going to be hard to hear, are going to be hard to share. There was a reason we started with our Protecting Our Ways of Life Tribunal and Summit, and our Lands and Laws Tribunal and Summit, because we knew that in those spaces, our Native peoples have been at the forefront of advocacy, trying to protect our ability to hunt, fish, harvest, gather, share, and have ceremony. And the place that we've had the hardest time creating, because of how painful it can be, is around the boarding schools and the impacts of those boarding schools on our communities. So we wanted to build our muscle, if you will, our spiritual muscle, our collective healing muscle, to get us better prepared. And tonight, we just really wanted to seek your advice and guidance as people who work in healing, as healers. And I guess the first question I might ask, and to all three of you, and would love to hear from all three of you, is what can we do to prepare ourselves for the truths that are going to be told and the truths that we are going to hear? What are the things that we can do to prepare ourselves for that?
Can I just make a couple of short comments? You know, when I started to really begin looking at my genealogical family story, and started before I started to learn what happened across multiple generations in my family. The first thing that I did was to begin going to elders and to seek some advice and get some ideas about how you view some of these painful things and adversity in life. And so many of our communities have elders and people that can help guide you. And they're our best resource. And then the other thing is for us to have a little bit of an idea and maybe a perspective about how we begin to see adversity in life, lifetime trauma, historical trauma, those kinds of things. But hurt, grief, trauma, it's a normal part of life and being human. And so many of our elders carry with them how we view and how we begin to work on some of the things in our own lifetime history. As a human being, you are born into life that is going to encounter adversity. That's just part of what being human is. And so every culture has its practices, its rituals, its ways to express and navigate through grief. And so the best thing I think, at least for myself, is to connect to elders in our community. They carry a lot of the knowledge and the wisdom. They have gone through a lot of what we may not have experienced yet. And they've applied that wisdom. And so that's one thing we can do just to get it started, okay?
Yeah. Tina.
Yeah, I can go next. Thank you, Rose. Yeah, our elders really know how to say the right thing. And our elders share stories that really help us heal. And so I would really encourage all of us to prepare ourselves for hearing the truth by paying attention to what our bodies are feeling. Whether if you are talking or you are listening, it's common that you'll feel your body react, because our mind and bodies are connected, mind, body, spirit, as we're taught by our elders. And so I just think it's really important to be okay with recognizing that our stomachs may feel uncomfortable. Our throats might feel like they're starting to close. We might feel choked up. Our palms might start to sweat. Our hearts might start to race. And I think just being aware of feeling and acknowledging it, just acknowledging that your body is reacting. Because when we talk about these very deep soul wounds, sometimes we're not even planning on talking. Sometimes we attend talking circles and don't expect to share certain things that come out of us. And so I just think it's really, really important, not only, as Rose said, to go to our elders, go to somebody that you trust and somebody that you can talk to. And if you decide to share, if you're in the space listening, just recognize what your body's doing. Trauma lives in us, and when we begin to talk about it, it comes out. So often we don't want to talk about it. And we hear elders teach us how when we don't talk about it, it can really make us sick. And many times we don't even know what we're feeling when we're listening. We don't understand why we are feeling a lot of emotions. And that's why it's also important to move our bodies and to release that, to shake it out and to release it, to get our bodies moving. They always say that dealing with the things that really sit deep as soul wounds they sit so deep in us, and we're afraid to address it because it hurts too much, like physically hurts. It hurts emotionally, but it also hurts physically. And a lot of times we don't have the words to describe it. And when I think about children, and I think about how children, all of us can maybe remember a time when a child says, I have a stomach ache, or I have a headache. And sometimes their heart might hurt, their feelings might be hurt, but they don't have the words. The same thing applies to us as adults. Sometimes we don't even know how to describe in words what hurts. And so creating this space where people can tell their truth, this very sacred, safe space, it's scary. And it really has the ability to heal. It has ability to heal our people, to heal our past, to heal ourselves, and to heal our future generations. Because sometimes we just don't even understand what's hurting us. Thank you.
Yeah, finish cheers. Bob.
Sometimes I just like to have a moment of silence for myself to think about healing. And The last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to think about those children in Carlisle and to focus in on their lives. 100 years ago, it seems just like yesterday to us. And our memories are so precise when it comes to our ancestry here in Alaska. And these are our relatives that are out there. And the time that they were taken, we had vibrant people, resilient. They lived off the land. They ate their food. Everything was provided for them. Many suffered from disease, new disease. So I think about those children at the time they were taken from Ketchikan, from Kodiak, Dillingham, all across the state. Yes, they were children and many were orphans. But the second they were taken off our homeland, the very second, they were no longer children. They were full-blown adults. Full-blown. And they were taken to Sitka and Seattle, taken by cattle train to Carlisle. But we must remember these were Alaska Native children. Among them was courage and bravery and resilience and holding each other together, supporting each other all the way to Carlisle, supporting. And no matter what they went through, they stuck together. If one went to the guardhouse, they all went to the guardhouse. Even when they were sick, there was one young Alaskan Native, Iñupiaq lady, young. She had tuberculosis, but she pushed her sickness aside and she supported all everyone around her. Everyone fell in love with her because she was Alaska Native. And when they passed away, the reason they were no longer children is because they buried themselves. No adult helped them. The children buried themselves. 13 from Alaska passed away, and efforts to bring them home are already on happening, and one is already here. And other efforts to bring others home are being resolved now. So we're on our way, and it's an incredible journey to come home, to make a journey home. Incredible. And as painful as it is, and I have suffered, but the reason I suffered is because I tried to do it alone. It cannot be done alone. We need the collective assistance from healers all across the state. And it already is happening, and we are being carried. We're being carried by a higher power because of our spirituality. I believe that this higher power loves us so much that the children are coming home. And wow, they did not kill the Indian to save the man. They did not do that because they practiced their culture, even in those storms. They kept it alive, just like we did. We were the same as them because it was taken out of us in the same way. But we kept it alive in here. And when that young Iñupiaq lady passed away, the whole school, all the tribes, gave her a proper burial. So these children were very special souls. Some were leaders, born leaders among their people. Some were nomads, traveling across the tundra. And some were deeply spiritual people who had their culture inside of them. And they waited for us. Because their last thought, I want to go home. Do you know that's in every single one of us, no matter where we're at? Our last thought, I want to go home. So 100 years later, just like yesterday, to Alaska Native people, we never forgot them. And they're coming home, and they're going to fill the spot, the empty spot in our heart with love. They're going to fill us with love and culture. And we're going to wrap our robe around them. We're going to sing. We're going to drum. Put on our regalia. Dance. Share food. It's still alive. We are still alive and we're here. The most important thing, the very, very most important thing is forgiveness. How can we forgive that? How? But we must forgive. And as they come home, the pain of those children is so great. We feel that pain today. But the pain those children felt back then was so great. But God has carried them the whole time. I know that. Because they're coming home. And they're the ones that are leading us. The elders. Sometimes an elder is a little child, a little baby, a teenager. Sometimes we sing to them and drum and speak the language to them, and they come out singing and drumming, and they're already elders from the moment they're born. And there are many among us. I'm so happy to see them and to see the culture come alive, to see us singing and drumming and seeing the vibrancy of who we are is so powerful. And that is why those children are coming home. Because they want to be with us. And I'm sure that they're already by God. I'm sure of that. It's us that needs to heal. It's us. So with the children coming home, we're going to have the best future generation because we're going to heal. And no matter how hard it is, those bodies, someday you're going to look outside your living room or your bedroom window, you're going to see a child that was taken away long ago, come home, buried next to your family. Healing occurs just by seeing how our ancestors come back together. So I've experienced a lot with bringing bodies home, and I've experienced good healing and bad. But in the long run, it's always good because healing takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. It's generations. But there's a ceremony that we do. When we put our regalia on our grandchildren become us. And that's what we're doing for those boarding home children. So my coffee's getting cold, so I better drink more coffee and listen to people. And I am healing just by talking with you, because I kept this to myself, which was the biggest mistake of my life. And I'm so fortunate to be an Alaska Native who has culture, heritage, language, dance. And as you could tell, I'm a storyteller, so I better stop now and drink my coffee. So, Ganashtish.
Sheesh. Sheesh, Bob. Gosh, I was right there on that cattle train with our kids. I was journeying with them. And as I was listening to you, Bob, I was reflecting on how our people have always been protectors. We've always watched out for setting up our kids for success. Those kids were watching out and protecting each other. Our peoples, knowing that it was not safe, put many of our practices, our languages to sleep to protect them for a time, knowing that there would come a time when they would awaken again, when it was safe. And I was just really feeling thankful for that protective spirit of our people. It runs through all of us. It shows up today in so many ways. I was thinking about how powerful our minds are, how our minds know when it's safe to come out and when it's not. For me, one way that that might look is in anxiety. I may find myself being very anxious and dress rehearsing disaster in my mind. I may be expecting all of the worst things that could possibly happen. And I've come to know that that is my mind powerfully working really hard to protect me. That it's thinking of all of these different things that I need to be prepared for just in case. And I've come to be able to thank my mind for that. That my mind is working really hard to protect me. But sometimes in trying to protect us, we might find ourselves avoiding thinking and feeling. Like Tina, you were talking earlier about how to be centered in your body and know and name what you're feeling in your body. And so I wanted to ask for anyone who wants to share, what is part of your practice of walking through preparing yourself in your mind? If there are uncomfortable feelings that come up, what is something that you tell yourself? What is something that you do physically that helps you? What is your practice of preparing yourself when you know something is going to hurt? Like these are wounds. These are wounds that have, in many ways, been festering. Right? And now we're in this process of trying to clean them out, which we know is a painful necessity to heal. So how do we prepare ourselves? What are some of your practices?
I guess I'll volunteer to go first. I'm really blessed to have spent a great deal of time with our elders from out in this region, and for them to help me to learn how to navigate through difficulties and hardship, adversity, and to work on some of the traumatic experiences of my lifetime. And so it's really good to remind myself that the things that I carry are real, and the things that I experienced changed my mind, my whole being, my spirit, and that I believe that they impact the way I think and the way I view my world and how I respond to my environment and the people that I am close to. I believe that. So I understand that the experiences that I carry that hurt me and changed me, if I do not process it, that it's going to come out as hurt to the people that I love the most. So it's like talking to myself and convincing myself that I have to do something. I have to process. I have to tell my story, and I have to get it out, and I have to make sure that it's not just the experience that I talk about, but the feelings and the thoughts and how that affected me, what it made me become, and how I changed. And convince myself that I do that no matter how painful it is, and understand that I carry a lot of shame with that, and that shame is misguided. It doesn't belong to me, and that it is the way in which I am going to be able to know what to do to move away from that and heal. So I really appreciate that wisdom that I've been able to get from our elders. I talk with my family, my husband, and let him know that I need a lot of support, or I will need a lot of support, and that I'm dealing with something that I'm carrying, or I'm going to deal with it. I take care of my physical needs. I get a lot of rest and make sure that I'm physically prepared. I do a lot of prayer, and I tell myself that my response to whatever I am working on is a normal response to experiences that changed me, and that that I have to process through, and that I don't do this alone. I also remind myself that the most powerful medicine that I can receive in navigating through and processing is love and patience and no judgment from my family and people who mean a great deal to me. I also know that even if I have to reawaken that loss, whatever form it is, it's the most powerful way to overcome. It also helps when I realize that I have to give meaning to that story, to that experience, and I also understand that the outcome of doing that very difficult work is going to gift me with wisdom to deal with, because the rest of my life is going to be equally difficult and full of challenges. But the most important thing for me is that when I get to the other side of dealing with that I'm going to have the wisdom and the skills and the knowledge to help those I love the most, my family, my children, and my grandchildren, and people I care a lot around me. So all of what we go through, the things we carry, the history that we drag, the response to that hurt is normal, and we're not alone. So those are some of the ways in which, you know, I prepare myself, and I also understand that I have full control over my response. I try to be aware of how I am feeling, and when I start to feel like I'm sinking into that really deep dark hole, then I will do something. I'll connect with family. I'll clean up. I'll do dishes. I will spend some time with my grandbabies, and that will give me control over how I respond to and how I deal with whatever it is, no matter how scary, no matter how traumatic it is, because I know when I come out on the other side, I will be back in balance. Koyana.
Thank you so much, Rose. You were speaking to my heart there, listening to you. Thank you so much. You know, so the question is, what is part of our own practice in walking through preparing for difficult dialogue? So I shared earlier that you know, that I'm a provider, I'm a psychologist, and so I do work with people and in our healing center, and it was our teaching elders that taught me how to prepare for hearing stories and for hearing the pain that our people carry. And I did have to talk to an elder about how do I let that go, because it affects me. And we call that secondary trauma. And I really have to say that what works for me is to give it to a higher power. I do pray a lot before I go into session, and listening to our people, to be able to hold space for our people to share their hearts. It does impact me because I care so deeply about our people. I go for walks, and I like to feel the air on my face, and I like to move my body. And I recommend that. It's a way to release some of the energy that our bodies absorb when we listen to the pain of our people. I like to laugh a lot. Laughter is my medicine. And so that is something that I surround myself with people that make me laugh. You know, when I think about healing, I think about there's a saying that the wound is the cure. And so we all have a story. And with my story as a teenager, I was working at a hotel in the middle of the Bering Sea out on St. Paul Island at the King Eider Hotel. And so there were tourists that visited from all over the world. I had dealt with a lot of trauma as a child, separated from my mother, and throughout my childhood, and experienced a lot of pain, emotional and physically. And My healing journey started with tourists asking, you don't look like you belong here. You don't look like you're from around here. Where are you from? And that opened the story to share that I'm half valued and I'm half Chamorro. And I was able to describe, and then they would ask questions after questions after questions. These are people from Japan, Germany, from all over the world to come and see the birds out on the island. And I began to tell my story, and I would cry. So crying's okay. And I was told that crying is cleansing our soul. But I would tell my story over and over and over because tourists would ask me questions constantly. And I would tell my story. And it was through telling my story repeatedly that I began to really heal. I began to tell my story to the point that it just didn't hurt as deeply. All those wounds started to just surface, and I began to release it. And Bob talked about forgiveness. And I have to say that forgiveness was a huge piece of being able to move forward and become a mother and to raise my children and to do it with love. And so forgiveness for me is very powerful because I was able to then continue my life moving forward. And as Rose described, I began to realize that I'm okay. And Rose, as you were talking and saying that you would tell yourself, you would convince yourself, I do that. I do that too. In my head, I tell myself, you're okay. Because I do get triggered. Even this late in life, I still get triggered. And so I work really, really hard to tell myself I'm okay. Those are just words. I'm safe. I'm okay. And so you were speaking to my heart, Rose, because to sit with you this evening as an elder, a very well-respected elder, and to hear you choose the words that have helped you and to know that those are the same things that I've done to help myself. It just, to me, that means a lot. I like to nourish my body and eat something that's good for me. Especially if I'm not feeling mentally well, I think it's important. And reaching out for extra help if you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like after you share your story and you're still not sitting well, I would agree with Rose, you're not alone. And there are people, those of us on the screen, that would hold space for people to hold their hearts and allow them to continue to process some of the things that are stuck. And in working with people in our healing center and in the past, I have learned that it's almost like hundreds of pounds lifted off your shoulder, your heart, and your mind when you speak the truth. And you're able to have a safe place to do that. So laughter, prayer, food to nourish our body. And I definitely like to walk and move any energy that doesn't feel good out of my body by just taking a walk. Music is also really good for our minds. It's the one thing that stimulates our entire brain. And I have to say, the music we started off with, I couldn't take my eyes off that little baby drumming. I mean, that little baby was drumming really well. And so, yeah, thank you for asking that question.
Very important question. I prepare myself by understanding how difficult it is to do something like this. It's not easy. And all my life has been very hard life. Even as a child, growing up in the 50s, 1950s, territory of Alaska, I still remember the people dying from tuberculosis and the trauma of the territory days. And I remember the bodies as a child. And my saving grace was my grandmother, who always stood by us, and I was able to receive support from her. Often she'd explain things to me that maybe that baby wasn't ready to come into the world. So my grandmother, I always carry something from her. Maybe it's a little doll or moccasin that she made. Everything, everywhere I go, I carry something from her. She taught me about plants, how to gather plants, medicine, how to use plant medicine, the stories, how to feel good about myself, and to prepare for hard times. Because back then, really, it was really hard. And to the point where the whole village almost disappeared completely. And today, of the 600 people that lived in that village, only 15 are alive today. So, and I'm the caretaker of them, the cemetery caretaker. So in some way, I feel pretty connected to them still. And I've always known that they've never really left us. They've always been with us. So as a caretaker, I've been able to focus on our mortuary practices and work with families. And as a storyteller, I've been able to go to those families and use my voice and talk to them and go through grief with them and even humor, sharing the good things that this person did in their life, things like that, and soothe people with your voice is something that is as old as time itself. To be able to soothe a family just with your voice the tone. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Tone is so important when you're speaking. And you listen to our elders, you'll hear their tone. This story began in an ancient time. In ancient time when animal can talk to human and human can talk to animal. There is a spirit in all things. The power of voice and how it soothes people. You can make them laugh, cry, help them through grief. And it's so beautiful, our culture, especially our mortuary practices. We are a people. We have suffered so much. Sometimes all that is left is the grandma and the grandchild in a village. Sometimes that's all that is left. But you know, from that grandma and that grandchild, we could all come from that grandchild. That's the kind of people we are. We're not so afraid of death. It's part of our life. And we even celebrate it. An elder, somebody who does great things, accomplish great things. So we're good at these things. It's something that is preserved in our society. And how we hold each other up, how to support each other, and to make sure that nobody dies alone. Nobody. Everyone deserves to die with dignity, respect, and honor. And personally, I think it should be free. We should never have to pay for that. It's our humanity. It's what sets us aside from the animal world, how we take care of our dead. And those of us who are Alaska Native, we're good at that. So this is humanity we're talking about. This is our heartfelt humanity. And what do I do to prepare myself? Well, personally, I go to Japan and I go to a Shinto shrine. I go up to the mountain. I sit underneath a river or waterfall and let the water hit my head and I pray. So I take care of myself and I take care of my faith. And there's going to be thousands coming home. It's not just 13. There's going to be thousands. And I'm not going to be here to see it through. But I have faith in you because we're Alaska Natives. This is what we do. And I'm very proud to be with you now. And what I'm not going to see is going to be okay, because I will be on that side. Come on home. Thank you.
Ganesh Chish. How Atlain Ganesh Chish, Bob. You folks sure know how. From what you shared, Rose, Tina, and Bob, there's so much wisdom in the way that you approach bringing yourself to the work that you do. And not the work that you do like an employment situation, but the work that you do for healing, your own healing, and the impact it has on your family and those around you. I think you said, Rose, to the ones you love the most. And then Tina, in terms of the things that you do in the presence of bearing witness to these stories and truths, and how much they may not be your stories, but they're stories of our Native people, and therefore they're part of who you are, and have an impact on you, and the ways that you think through making sure to prepare yourself for it, and be able to hold space for them. And then with Bob, of course, you remind me of something that we heard from the healers, and maybe it was you, Bob, that said this. We had a gathering of healers on Saturday, also to help us prepare the space. And one of the things that we heard there was, we have all the time that we need. Oftentimes we think like we only have this much time, we got to get it done, and it can feel overwhelming. This collective intergenerational healing journey that we're on. And somebody said something about it, and it really stuck with me. We have enough time, because whatever we can't accomplish in our lives while we're here, we'll finish, and we'll be there for as ancestors. Like this continuous loop that we're a part of doesn't just end with where we are. We acknowledge that when we talk about our ancestors and the strength and the knowledge that we receive from them, and what's passed down through our elders. And we have to remember that looking forward as well, we're going to have that same role. And Grandma Rita Blumenstein always said, when you heal yourself, you heal your ancestors, and you heal your future ancestors. When I think about the cultural practices that we have, so many of our people may be at a different part in their journey. A part of their journey where they have excitement and passion and commitment to learning our languages and our cultural practices. And maybe that's not quite connected yet to resolving the traumas in their past, and maybe it's not quite connected to resolving the intergenerational traumas that our peoples have experienced and that we carry forward collectively as Native peoples. But they come together at some point. There's a power in our practices. And there's a power in learning our languages that is beyond just the ability to communicate. These are healing methodologies. And so I wonder if you might speak to some of the, maybe the cultural activities or connections that you have that you use to help yourself, or that perhaps you help other people connect to as a part of their healing work.
Some of the things that we do and we talk about is focused on the deeper part of our culture. So it's always difficult to communicate some of that in a very short time. So it just doesn't involve the surface part of our culture, the practices and the things that we try to help people understand in the healing work that we do. So it's not all just focused on like dance and language and artwork and a lot of that. And so we spend a great deal of time trying to help, trying for all of us to understand the deeper part of our culture. From our worldview, how we make sense of the world and how we believe and how we love and laugh and the wisdom that really dictates all of that. The part of our identity that was really targeted in the process of colonization, and that part that we were made to set aside. So when we do a lot of the healing work, we try to help participants to understand that our worldview about how we look at all of this, the grief and historical trauma, lifetime trauma, navigating through hardship and acceptance and what's important in that journey, and how our ancestors were able to navigate through difficulties and hardship. That we didn't have the trained, credentialed individuals in our communities. We didn't have clinicians and psychiatrists. We didn't have doctors. We had each other, and we had our wisdom, and we had our ways that were taught to us to express express grief, I guess, and some of the things that our elders were teaching us, because I am colonized, was really hard for me to accept and to have faith. Like, you know, in the previous work that I've done before going into healing, I had a career in the prison system. And so a lot of the work that I did was counseling. And, you know, all of that training, it really rubbed against what our ancestral ways viewed all of this, and like how we look at maybe burnout and vicarious or secondary trauma, and that you know, the elders were teaching us that's not how we look at it. And so a lot of the culturally focused activities that we do are really, really helping all of us to understand the most important medicine in that needs to be a part of healing and guiding people through the process. And so we talk about unconditional love and how we're taught to internalize so that we are of unconditional love, and that the expression of unconditional love is expressing patience and generosity and non-judgment and sympathy and compassion, and this looking like what it is as we're taught in our families, in our communities, and that we already know that because we have memories of how our grandmas and grandpas, how they related to us and how they took care of us, and that worldview, that powerful medicine, we can talk about it and understand it in any language. So I can describe our ancestral wisdom and talk about that unconditional love and the definition of that in any language, because no matter who you are, where you come from, we are human, and we do all of this at that basic level. So the dancing, the food, the language, the artwork, those are expressions of that deeper part of who we are. And we have it because we had connection to our grandparents and some significant elders in our community, and we know we already know that, and that that when we are able to share our stories, and when we can heal collectively, we're gonna be able to nurture that part of us that is about unconditional love and generosity and patience and respect and those kinds of things. And that is our worldview. That is how we process and heal. And that we if we're able to go through that, then it's going to restore and nurture those parts that are who we are. So I'm not sure if I can make some sense, and that when we are able to begin to do some work on that, then we're going to be able to connect to elders in our community. We're going to be able to connect to each other. We're going to be able to remember so much more of those things that we saw in elders, in our grandparents, and we're going to seek more knowledge, and we're going to do more healing activities. And pretty soon we're going to start thinking like how our ancestors did. And soon that will bring us to be able to behave like them and to live like them and practice and teach. So, and so once that part of you is nurtured or taken care of and worked on, then the dancing, the language, the clothing, the food will have that insatiable desire to express it in those ways. So I'm not sure if this makes any sense. Brianna.
Rose, I just love you. That is so beautiful. You just we're dropping bombs left and right. You made more than sense. You made more than sense.
Yeah, Rose, I feel like tonight, not only did you make sense, but I just feel really blessed to be here this evening, because as you were speaking, so if I could make myself very vulnerable, so I don't speak my language, right? I don't even have a native name. Like, I don't have a native name. People ask me, what's your name? I don't have a native name. I don't speak my language. Some of that brings discomfort, like I get uncomfortable. I wouldn't say that I live with shame because of it, because I know the history, I know the story, but it does make me different. It makes me different because not being able to speak my language doesn't make me any less so proud to be Alaska Native. And but it is hard. If I always joke, and I always open with ong ong, because hello is the only word I know, and I don't know why we say it twice, and I never know if I'm even wrong saying it twice. But I share that because when we talk about healing from our culture, And when we talk about using our culture to heal, tonight is probably the first time, other than working with Grandma Rita Blumenstein, who always said, love will heal all. Tonight's the first time, and to all of you here this evening having coffee time, I have heard Rose's name in our work for many, many years. I've never met her. This is my first time being able to sit in space with Rose. And as you spoke, Rose, people always want to know, how do you, what do we do culturally to heal? So sometimes that's a confusing question because I don't even speak the language, so I can't even speak the language, which is a healing language, no matter which of our tribal languages. I don't know ceremony. I don't know the ceremonies of the people of the land I'm living on. I don't know ceremony from the land I come from. What I do know is what you just talked about tonight. I do know that the way I treat people and the space that Creator allowed me to create to help people heal themselves is by honoring our traditional values, our tribal values, respecting our elders, respecting each other, holding each other up. I'm blown away, Rose, how you spoke of that, because I just feel like for the first time, I've been given permission to be okay with that I don't know how to do certain traditional practices. I don't know how. I welcome it. I welcome any individual who wants to heal in a way that is customary to their land and to their people. I welcome it. And I'll search high and low to find people to help them heal themselves with those practices. But the only thing that I have to offer is what you just described, and that is love and respect and patience. And the people that I work with, I always encourage them. Our job is not to fix people. Our job is to create space to help people heal themselves. Because when I was suffering, no matter what anyone said to me, I had to find it within myself. But all the love, the unconditional love and the patience with me helped me to pause and to look inside myself. And so not only did you make sense, but in Western science, we try to study everything and we try to make sense of things in a way that is acceptable. And what you just described is just being human and just being who we are, who Creator made us. And we do that really well as Native people because we take care of each other and we hold each other up. And I'm really glad that Liz calls me Tina and not Dr. Woods, because when I went to school, some of my elders said, don't you come back using big words, just be who you are. And so I like being who I am. And as we go into the difficult stories, the painful stories that people are going to share, I just feel like I want to say that Rose just gave us the recipe to just love and hold each other up. And that's healing. I just want to say thank you, Rose.
Yeah, there's Tina, for reciprocating and holding Rose up and what she shared. It's so true, the the ways we've been programmed to think about our cultures is very surface level. And the realness of our culture is much deeper than that. And so deep, in fact, that we're nowhere near knowing all of it. And none of our ancestors ever had that goal, because it wasn't a competition or a pursuit to know it all. There was an understanding of the balance that we need to have and the role that we play. And so I just really appreciate that, Rose and Tina. Bob, did you wanna share on this question?
I have to get myself positioned first here. There's no mistake that this picture is there. I kind of feel that my mind is kind of like that sometimes. The last 2 years has been very difficult time for all of us with this pandemic and so many people passing before us, and we're losing so many so quickly. And it feels like right now is the most exciting time that we as Alaska Native people are living in. And as a culture of people, I feel that there are people among us that are doing really great things, as great as our ancestors have done. They're out there saving lives and giving themselves in the hospitals, in the homes, and protecting the children. There are many, many heroes among us that are just as great as our ancestors. And we should bring them out and embrace them. And also the culture, the heritage lives in all our children. And it's so special for us to have the kind of children we have. They're like pure spirits from God. They're so precious among us. And when we see them out in their regalia and drumming and singing, it just touches our hearts so deeply in a really spiritual way. And it makes us proud. It's not magic. It's not mystical. It's very simple family values that hold us together as a people. And we are the ones that are teaching the outside world how important family values are. And today, most of our highly professional people get a job, get a career, make lots of money, do this, go out in the world, be the best of who we are. But there's something wrong with that. There's something missing. And that's our family values. they come home and we stay home. We learn our culture, our heritage. That is so important, so simple. And I push this all the time, and I'm going to continue. Let's be Indigenous for the time we live in. Let's make the most of it and contribute in the best way we know how. And stop being indigent and contribute. Let's keep on contributing. I'm very proud of you, Liz. Really. I can't express how much I hold you up, and that we need to do more of that. How we treat our opposites, how we treat our community members, how we say, I love you. Precious, precious. So it's that love.
That love, mic drop. Got it. Bob, that was beautiful. As I was listening, gosh, I feel like there's so many gifts being offered in this space tonight. I feel all filled up. Iñupiaq. Tina, as you were sharing, I was reflecting on how what you shared with us, that loss, the pain that I heard in your voice is an expression of the separation that our people are grieving individually and collectively. And I was sitting with that and I was feeling it. And as Bob was sharing, I was remembering of the depths of what we don't know with our mind, but our body knows. And I was remembering that every single one of us are named. You have a name. Every single one of our people are named and have been throughout all of time. Yours just hasn't been revealed to you yet, but it will. And just like when we hear, something that our people are expressing, and we have that warmth inside our heart, it's like something has lit up inside of us. And I feel like that is the knowledge that is within us that's waking up. That's what it feels like to me when we hear something that we know is real, that we know is true. And I think there's going to be a lot of those experiences as our truths are brought to the light. That these truths that are already within us are waking up. And I just wanted to offer that to you, Tina, and to others who I know, including myself, who feel that pain of separation. And that this is part of clearing the path so that our future ancestors have a different way of accessing our knowledge. It also was making me think, as I was reflecting on how much of our knowledge is sleeping within us. Rose, when you were expressing how much of our ways of knowing we were separated from through boarding schools. And I was thinking about how one of those things that I reflect on often is around our ways of navigating conflict within ourselves and also with each other. How do we care for each other? How do we care for our loved ones when they're hurting? How do we be good relatives when we ourselves are hurting? So as I was listening, that was a question that I wanted to bring forward to anyone who feels called to respond, and that is, others around us, including our loved ones, will also be experiencing these truths. How can we take care of each other, especially in those moments when we ourselves are hurting? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we watch out for each other, how we extend that love and that compassion, that grace, that sympathy, that generosity that you were speaking of, Rose. How can we do that with each other?
You have to realize I'm a little bit colonized still, or mostly. I can get uncomfortable with silence at times in a setting like this. So one of the hardest things I had was to place a kind of gentle, compassionate attention to self. And it was a really, really adamant instruction from elders that in order to help others, in order to support others, that you're going to have to focus on self first and begin that healing first. And in order to be able to guide another person, you're going to have to tell your story. And if you haven't processed through, if you haven't examined, if you haven't reflected, if you haven't turned it inside out, then you're not going to be able to tell that story in a way that will help guide another person through that process. So, excuse me, sorry.
Wait, we just lost your audio, Rose. Can you hear me? Rose, can you hear me? Oh, shucks.
It was very difficult for me to turn my attention to self. Sorry about that. I had a low battery warning. So it was scary, and I didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't know how to navigate through addressing all that childhood trauma. But I also didn't realize that not addressing that made it difficult for me to support and guide and work with people who needed that. So it's important to start looking at and reflecting and processing through some of that, so we could be a good neighbor, a loving neighbor, a gentle relative, a supportive relative. And we were also taught by our elders that if we have not processed through that as we're supporting another person, that we could cause harm, we could hurt rather than help. But it was probably the most difficult for me to begin that process. It always seemed easier to place attention, this kind of attention, on someone else rather than to look within. So that's something I had to learn how to do. And to be able to start understanding that everything that we carried blocked so much potential, and the ability to relate, not just with your family, but to be able to relate to the Creator and to self. The hurt that we carry individually, collectively, lifetime and historically, severed that ability. And when you start to look to self and start to reflect and turn inside out and examine every angle, it contributes to your understanding of how it affects the way you think, the way you behave, the way you respond. And so it gives you some insight as to how you change the way you think, the way you behave, and the way you respond. And it really helps you to see the impact of all of that and gain that understanding, so that when you are supporting somebody else, you have some idea about how they're responding, where they're at, the fears that they have, the lack of understanding, or to be able to be a support and provide some education and some options so that they can navigate through. That's the process. I look back and I remember, the times where I had to tell my stories, share my experiences, and the terror and the shame and not knowing. So, but when we go through that process and we're able to share and tell some of that, then we're able to help another individual who's listening who might not have any clue. We're giving them the form and the way to be able to communicate and put a name to something that's they've never been able to do. And that by itself empowers the person that you're supporting to begin the process. Our elders always called it, you're giving the gift of life. Because to live in this chaos and not knowing how to, or not having an idea, is not a full life. So the elders always called it our gifting of life. And then it is really an expression of unconditional love. It's putting yourself at that place of vulnerability and to be at risk, to place yourself at risk. That in itself is an expression of unconditional love. And it's going to communicate to the person that you're supporting, I'm not alone. There's a perfectly good reason why all of this is like this. And it gives them some idea as to what they need to do. And it creates that space of safety and it brings hope and all those wonderful things that individuals know that you're providing that kind of needed support.
I can just listen to Rose talk all night in answering the question. Let's see. Yeah, to support each other, I think, you just showed me such compassion earlier, and that really touched me. You demonstrated compassion and you put words to maybe something I don't even know how to explain. Yeah. And so how do we support each other? Just listening deeply with intention, being fully present means a lot to somebody. Sharing stories, and Rose talked about this. When we one of the reasons why I love talking circles, and this is basically a virtual talking circle, is that we see ourselves through each other, right? And when we see ourselves through each other, we're not alone. And Grandma Rita said that the talking circle would help heal the world. And I just, I think about our tribal values across all tribes on just respecting one another, giving the space for people to just be who they are, without judgment, without force. And I feel like something really special happens when you do that, when you create that space. It just allows people to feel and to heal. And then finally, what I'll say is that I strongly believe that relationships with each other is what heals us. And when we come together and talk about things that collectively our people have experienced so painful, I feel like the medicine is going to be within us being together and feeling it together and knowing we're not alone, because of those stories that we'll share. So those are just some of the things that I think are going to help us help one another.
You have to excuse me when you ask that question. My cowlick started to act up. It gets kind of crazy sometimes, and maybe I started thinking about my past back when I let my addictions control me. And thinking about those times, I felt like I was a wounded warrior, hurt and resentful, full of pain. I think that pain was very deep, much deeper than the anger and hate and stuff. I think it was all pain. And February 21st, 1980, it stopped. And it didn't go away, but it stopped. Because there was nothing to replace that pain. No emotions, no feeling, no love, not knowing the meaning or feeling good feelings, just not knowing. So what I did was I started making a list of feeling words. And I kept adding to that list every day, and that list grew. And after a while, it was a book of feeling words and self-help. The 1980s was full of self-help. Boy, I couldn't go to enough self-help groups, but enough to become a counselor. But even that was a problem because I became codependent. And so thankfully, after 2 years, I got out of that and began to help myself. It was my culture, my way of life, my food that brought me back home. And made me a little more calm about myself and helped me remember that there's a difference between being an Indian and being Tlingit. There's a difference. Makes you a human being. So my culture really brought me home, made me more calm, more relaxed, and storytelling, learning storytelling made me more relaxed. And the best thing about storytelling and recovery, this is the number one thing that helped me, is going to get a criminal background check. At first, I resented it, but in time, it made a better human being out of me. Because I had to go get that check, background check, so I could work with young people. And if you ever get in trouble, if you ever have a felony, that's it. It takes a lifetime to get rid of those things. So I was very fortunate that I never got a felony. And my life went on to even better. And better, it gets better every single day. And I enjoy my life today. And it allows me to feel something here inside that I listened the last 2 hours, and this reminds me of my elders who would say, we can talk about this stuff all night long into the early morning hours, and 2 hours just isn't long enough for something this serious. So I'm very glad that we extended it a few minutes longer so that all of us can share. And in a very traditional cultural way, and share from the heart. I went to college. I remember Fairbanks in the early 70s. It helped me a lot. But my culture touches my heart. And that was the longest journey, is to my heart. And to be able to express myself as a man and cry on Zoom. And I don't even know if it's on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but I cried tonight. And that is healing. If we can let the tears come, gather up our tears and put them into a little jar, we can take those tears and sprinkle them around. And those tears are going to heal others. Healing tears. So this is good stuff. And very traditional and very old, not mysterious, not magical, but love. So we're ready. We are ready. And I'm getting kind of hungry, so I'm going to take a little break, but I'm going to listen to everybody else. But I don't want you to stop because I'm listening. Okay?
Sheesh, Bob. One of the things that I was thinking about as we're looking to prepare ourselves and our community, our collective selves, one of the things that I've been thinking about comes from all that you've all shared this evening. And I guess I'll ask this question before a closing question. We have lots of because of these boarding schools and these other types of entities and institutions that were created and that separated us from ourselves, took our children away from us. We know that one of the living implications and consequences has been that a lot of our people have been removed from our villages, have been removed from close contact with their direct family, have been removed from, as we spoke about earlier, our cultures and our languages, but really there's a distance, sometimes an even geographic one, where our people have been relocated down south and have never even had a chance to come to Alaska. And maybe they've never had a chance to really connect to an elder, capital E, elder. And so maybe they don't know how to seek some of the things that we've talked about here tonight, about seeking that elder's knowledge and guidance, seeking that connection to family and community in a way that may help them on their healing journey. I wonder if you folks have advice for ways they may think about what they do have around them, or for ways to continue their reconnection journey, because our Alaska Native diaspora is global at this point. But I was wondering if maybe you might share some ideas on that.
Well, I might as well just keep at it. That's kind of that's a very difficult question, actually. And mostly it's because, like, healing and the journey toward becoming whole is so individual, and both your internal and external resources are so vastly different. But the process of healing helps to empower us to determine for ourselves how we move to wholeness and balance and health and well-being. And I'm always encouraging my family to think of ways to fill those gaps where we know, like, it's important to connect with elders. Well, we don't live where my elders that I grew up with are at. So we connect to different elders, different resources. And it doesn't matter if what culture they come from, so long as they teach you in a loving and gentle way. So long as you learn and that exchange that's necessary happens. So like in our culture, we teach sharing and caring, generosity. We have practices in our culture that help to reinforce that so that the children internalize that. And so it's like when my grandchildren made a gouda for the first time, or they got a rabbit or their first fish. And so sharing of that with an elder in the community, it doesn't matter what culture they come from. We know somebody, some elder not from the same culture who likes certain kinds of land or sea food, or river food, and they're unable to get that. And we know that when my grandchildren share that, the kind of gratitude that our grandchildren see, that really fills them and pushes them to learn how to do this. Not that they get something in return, but that part of them is filled and nurtured in a way where they really internalize. So it's important that when we begin this process of healing and we're able to begin moving away, it helps us and to build that creativity and that ingenuity, and helps us to know for ourselves what is needed to fill those gaps wherever you are and whomever is around you, so that you're in balance and you maintain balance and you learn. When my mother passed away, my mother-in-law lived for years after, and she was from Pennsylvania, not of the same culture. But there were so many needs that I could fill purposely, mindfully, and in the kind of relationship that I had with her. It was very purposeful, very meaningful. And she had a different culture, grew up in a different world, but she nurtured that part of me that I needed to have. So when we are able to begin the process of healing, when we're moving in that direction, when we're taking that journey, it really empowers us to be able to be creative and to be able to know what we need individually. Because none of you will do what I do to fill that need that you and I have. We're going to do something completely different. What works with me will not work for you. But that process of healing restores that ability to think, to dream, to be creative, and to vision, so that you're on this track, you're on this road to live in balance. So hard question.
I thought you answered it perfectly. If Bob's listening, I just want to say thank you, Bob, for making me laugh earlier, especially with your cowlick. I have a brother with a really strong cowlick, and so you really brought me laughter, and I needed that. Another thing you did, Bob, that I just want to acknowledge is talking about shedding tears, and you even made a joke about it that, you know, for all you know, this is Facebook Live, and what you did, Bob, is you just gifted many of us the permission to be okay with sharing tears and feeling what we feel, and not to be ashamed of that. And I just want to say thank you. And then Rose, I also just had to smile really big, because after you admitted that sometimes you get uncomfortable with silence, I was just smiling because, you know, we're trained to sit in silence. And so I thought if I just stay silent enough, Rose will just hop on. So it just made me smile when you said, all right, I guess we're doing this. So I just am really loving the elders this evening. So what's so special about Rose's comments and her answer to the question is that for myself, I shared that I'm Aleut, and most of my teachers are from and I want to share, because I think it's important to acknowledge those that that have taught me much of what I know in working with our people. And Liz Sunnyboy, you know, she's not Aleut. Wilson Justin, Jim LaBelle, and then of course the late Grandma Rita Blumenstein, and then one of my Aleut elders, Alice Petrovelli. So these are people that have really influenced my life, that I have learned a lot of what I know today in working with our people, blending both Western and traditional ways of healing. And so I didn't find it in, you know, in my tribe. I found it across the state. And I was taught that it's okay to adopt whatever works for you, whatever works for your own healing. And the healing is in the power of the relationship with somebody, right? And that's what I found is you know, Howard Luke gifted me a feather to use in talking circle. And every talking circle that I sit in, I bring that feather and I keep Howard's memory alive for all that he taught me. And so I just love your answer, Rose, because it is a difficult question. We have relatives, we have our brothers and sisters that are all over the United States that crave to be connected. And I always hope and pray that they just reach out and contact their tribe, contact their corporation, contact anyone that will listen and embrace them, and to help them find themselves, but also to find healing and find exploring who they are, even if it's with another tribe. And I think that's okay. So those are my comments.
Wow, I think I'm going to eat in front of everybody. This is a very serious evening, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper, as if we couldn't go any deeper already. 20 years ago, I worked on a project here in Sitka to send 139 bodies back home to almost every region of the state. And these bodies were from a tuberculosis sanitarium here in Sitka. And there was a plan to move them into a mass grave. But growing up, I knew some of the families, so I worked with the families to send all the bodies home, all over Alaska. And that experience changed my whole life. It really touched my soul deeply. The last 2 hours, we've been talking about trauma and boarding school and some of the scholarly views of dealing with trauma. This is my role that I've taken and I've really focused on, is to prepare a place for those bodies to come home to. That has been my focus, because if I got too involved in the trauma, in the boarding school issues, or too involved in the other things, I lost sight of preparing a place for them to come home to. So the last 3 years, I've refocused myself and to take each one individually and work with the lineal descendants. I cannot do this work without an affidavit from the lineal descendants. They are the ones. And under NAGPRA, the lineal descendants has precedent over a corporation, even over a government. They have the inherent right to do whatever they want with that body, including leaving it right where it's at. Lineal descendants. So they are the ones that we should focus on, is the lineal descendants for healing purposes. And also that this journey has also began already, and bodies are currently starting to come home. This is the spiritual part, and I don't know how to express it or even convey it. We are being carried. There will be times when that body comes home. It's only because God guided it home. Not us, but God. It's a journey home. It's like listening to an elder share a story about a gardener who loved his garden so much. Every day, the gardener would tend the garden. Every single flower with so much love and tenderness and care. Every single day. One day, that gardener went to the garden. All the flowers were gone. The whole garden gone. Oh, so much grief, so much love, tenderness, care. They were the children, each flower. But all of a sudden, God said, I watched you every day tend that garden, every day with love, tenderness, and care. I loved it so much. I picked all those flowers, placed them by my side for your love. So that's how I'm going to see those boarding home children. And that's why they're leading us and gave us faith in God It's not us, but the children. Thank you.
There's Chi, Shawa, Bob, and Tina and Rose. Such important messages to help hold us up and to give us good ideas about how to move forward. Through such a hard conversation that we're engaging in as a community. And I think I like the way you said it, Rose, that we have internal resources and there's external resources, the things that we can call upon, you know, and Bob, you were talking about that as well. And those deeper spiritual tools and connections and understandings that can help give meaning to something that didn't come from our communities, but we are living with and dealing with the consequences of it intergenerationally. And unless we start making this space, did you call it a soul wound, Tina? You called it a soul wound. And you said something about the wound is the healer.
The wound is the cure.
The wound is the cure. And this is the time that we're coming into now. It's been long coming, and there have been leaders out there in front breaking trail for us, because we are certainly not the first ones. And we are building and moving forward based on the things that others did before us to make it possible. And in our lifetime, kind of echoing off of some of Bob's words, in our lifetime, we get to be the ones who are here living now through this moment to help our peoples, to be part of that healing journey, to support them, to support ourselves collectively. And we're not doing it alone. We're doing it with you folks. We're doing it with the elders who taught you. One of our sisters in this work, Wathla, she shares a story sometimes about how when she would speak, her throat would lock up. And sometimes it would be impossible to speak without that throat locking up and the tears coming out. And I was in a situation like that where I was speaking someplace and that happened to me. And she said, and this comes from the story that she shares, she said, that's your ancestors speaking through you. So no matter how much your voice quivers, and no matter how hard it is for us to hold these stories and these truths of our people as we try to heal and make sense of it, you can't make sense of the things that happened to us in terms of what others did to us. There's lots of, reasons that that folks did these things to us that are senseless. The colonial process, the assimilation process, and the systemic racism that we have encountered, those aren't of our own making. We're dealing with the implications of it. And we have to find a way to make meaning for our peoples so we can grow and be strengthened and heal and move forward and allow our children to be flowers. The flowers, the strengthening flowers, the growing, blooming, healthy, thriving gardens of our people that we've had for thousands of generations. Here in Southeast, we had clam gardens, not flower gardens so much. Always goes back to food. But this is the journey that we're on, and you folks are here with us and you're helping us through it. And you have shared some really good words of advice and some really powerful stories to help us make meaning out of this and to help prepare us. And I can't thank you enough. Atlingunaschish, Jahawa, Qassataq, Quyanachaknak, Quenakpak. And we're not doing it alone, because we're doing it with you folks, with this healing, this coffee time on healing. We have a group of healers from around the state who have also been helping give us guidance. So many incredible, powerful, wonderful human beings. So I thank them. And we also have our elder advisors who I mentioned when we started. And I want to thank them as well. That's Liz Sunnyboy, who was mentioned. That's Jim LaBelle that was mentioned. That's Bob Sam, who's with us. And also Fred John. And they've been helping give us guidance as well. I just don't even want this night to stop, you folks. It's too good. Shall we just filibuster on healing all night? Bob's all, I'm cooking my third meal now. So I guess I just really want to just love you folks up and thank you so much for your time. And if you wanted to say anything as we wrap up, that would be wonderful too.
I am so pleased and honored to have an opportunity to witness the personal truth-telling, our own version of our history. And being able to do that is going to contribute to so much healing. It's going to allow us to make meaning out of it. That that we're not broken, or that there's not something wrong with us. That all of the impacts of that whole history caused us to respond to how harmful and hurtful some of that was. I will never forget when my grandma was sharing some of the stories that she shared. I could only bring my mind to the question, how could one human being treat another human being in such a way to cause death and destruction? So it's going to be the beginning of, for many, the work that needs to be done to integrate this sadness as part of who we are, so that it becomes wisdom and knowledge and strength rather than hurt and harm. We'll never forget. I will never, ever forget the things that happened to each generation in my family. I will never forget the things that happened in my lifetime. It's always going to be there. But the work has been done to integrate that sadness into part of who I am. And it's given me so much wisdom and strength. And so I'm excited to be part of this healing journey, collective healing journey. And then the final thing I want to say is that the mind is very, very powerful. Your behavior goes, your heart goes where your mind is. So it's important to keep it focused on gratitude. Gratitude that we have an opportunity to take care of each other, to support each other. Focused on gratitude that the truth-telling is going to bring healing. And gratitude that our Creator placed us here to be part of the circle that brings healing and supports healing. So if we can keep our minds focused on gratitude in that way, it will be as if we're taking those stories and tossing them aside rather than holding them. So that will be important to remember when we're hearing stories. And so we can help ourselves to be okay, no matter what we hear, no matter what we share. So thank you so very much for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm very grateful. I am very honored.
I wish I could share screen and show you, Rose, what I wrote, because I wrote, I typed silently here that I have so much gratitude to our people for having courage to share their stories, and that I really hope that, especially the message that Liz gave, the story that Liz shared around what it sometimes feels like when our ancestors are speaking through us, and sometimes that choked up feeling. I just really want our people to hear that that's okay, and that it's okay to pause, and it's okay to find breath, and it's okay to just be in silence if we need to, because it's hard work. And I'm just leaving all of you this evening with a lot of gratitude. And so to hear Rose say that, so thankful to be here this evening.
I'm on my second cup of coffee and I had dinner tonight, so I'm ready to go. Tonight has been really touching, healing, and full of love. I mentioned the 138 bodies 20 years ago. So now it's 20 years later, I am able to share experiences I have had of hope. Prior to sending those bodies home, many of these families were really struggling spiritually and physically, lots of problems. And when the bodies were sent home, it provided a healing opportunity, much like we are sharing tonight. And I've been blessed in the last 20 years of traveling in Alaska and across this country to see the descendants. And they're going on to be the best of who they are. It's like a light turned on for them. And that families who were apart for generations came back together because their ancestor came home. And every single one of those families treat me like one of their own. And it really created a sense of family and community from that experience that can never be replaced. To share something that sacred of a flower coming home, to share something that sacred with another human being, it's very special. And in the long run, we are a very healthy people. And if we set aside anger, hatred, resentment, lateral violence, if we set all that aside, the best generation will come. The best. And all that pain, they don't have to feel it anymore. Wonderful. So I want to leave this with that sense of hope, that it's the prayers and the faith that we're going to go on to be the people we were intended to be. And I'll stop there. Oh, I want to say thank you to Wilson Justin, Jim LaBelle, my good friend Fred John, and even my good buddy Walter Soboleff Jr. Who would ever thought that we'd be called elders, huh? Who would ever thought that? Anyway, they're a fine group of people, and I'm really proud to know them, especially you, Wilson. I've known you since back in the 70s, so we're doing good. We're still here, and I think I drank too much coffee tonight, so I better stop here. So see you.
Oh, good. I agree with you. Such an amazing group. Gosh, man, what a journey we've been on, huh? Wow. I feel so thankful. I'm reflecting on Bob's comment earlier when he said the last thought all of us will have is, I want to go home. And I feel like together, including all of those that have been helping to prepare throughout time for this time, that we're preparing a place for our truths to come home. And we know that we're strong enough to carry them. And conversations like this help to prepare us for that. So I want to say Unangax, Qassataq, Unangax, how ah. Thank you so much to each of you. So much love. As we began with a song, we'd like to close with a song as well. I'm going to call our relatives, our Iñupiaq relatives into this space, Asi, Philip, and Marie, to sing the song on video, not literally into the song, on video, to sing the pulling song, which loosely expresses, may we continue to pull from within on our journey to strengthening relationships with one another and our planet. So we'll close with this song.
So beautiful. What a good way to wrap up our time together. And with that, we'll sign off from our Facebook Live event and send love out to all our pupils and all others who have the opportunity to watch this live stream recording. It'll be available on our Facebook page at First Alaskans Institute. And also we'll move it over to our YouTube, so you'll be able to watch it in both places. I want to thank our beautiful relatives here one last time as we turn the live stream off. So good night, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Love you.